Welcome everybody. We are Yonkers Voice Central, and today's discussion is going to be a lively one, so hold on to your seatbelts. Today we are here to discuss the union's rebuttal to an interview that Yonkers Voice Central did with Mayor Mike Spano, and the people that are going to be issuing that rebuttal are Yonkers Fire Union President Barry McGoey, CSEA Union President Lionel Turner, and Yonkers PBA President Keith Olson. So since we have a lot to talk about, I want to get right to the point. Mayor Spano said a lot of things in the Yonkers Voice Central interview that everyone here disagrees with. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that Mayor Spano said that he has not used the word layoffs in 6 years. Now, I take it to imply that he isn't talking about anticipating layoffs. So let's weigh in on that.
Well, it's hard to imagine that he would, for the first 4 years of his administration, have even had to consider layoffs, because none of the municipal workers had contracts. All of our contracts had been expired, most through 2009. So he actually had it easy for the first 4 years, unlike many other mayors. And there's no reason for him to have uttered those words, layoffs. Unfortunately, he hasn't done his homework since.
But let me interrupt you. But what I'm getting at is we're hearing numbers. We're hearing hard numbers. We're hearing numbers of 30 in your department, and I think it's
127
in your department,
and 251 for the totality of Board of Ed.
And Keith, in your department, we're talking about upwards of 72.
72 in the police department.
So where did this notion of layoffs come from?
Well, first, it's important to remember too that in 2012, the mayor's first budget, there was talk of layoffs. There were threats of layoffs, and we went through the same dance back in 2012 on the municipal side, though. At that point, he kept the Board of Ed safe, but the municipal side we're looking at layoffs, and the mayor had asked for the same thing he's doing now. He asked for further concessions way back in 2012. So, I guess technically in the last 6 years, he may not have, but in his first budget, there was certainly talk of layoffs.
But again, getting to the point, where did the notion of layoffs come from? Where did that originate?
Well, 6 years of reckless financial mismanagement is the only answer to that question.
But who actually said that there are going to be this number of layoffs amongst the unions?
Well, let's see. Last week the mayor put out his budget, and in his budget, based upon his figures, that we have not been able to calculate or figure out, his number are suggesting, in order to balance his budget, that he has to lay off these many people in the city of Yonkers. Okay, his numbers, we don't necessarily believe those numbers are accurate. We've been trying to ascertain if these numbers are accurate. We wanted to speak to the state controller or anybody else to tell us.
But I hate to belabor the point. The layoff numbers originated where? Did that come from union calculations?
It's in the mayor's budget. The mayor presented his budget to the city several weeks ago, and it's the mayor's budget that calls for the layoffs of over 400 employees in the city of Yonkers.
All right. Okay. That's what I'm trying to understand, because the mayor is saying that he did not use the term layoffs. However, it's almost by default that layoffs are incorporated into the mayor's budget.
Well, he was referring to prior years. Up until this year, he said the other day that he hadn't mentioned the word layoff. But this year, he mentioned it to the tune of over 400 employees in the city of Yonkers. So it's his idea.
Okay, so that's where it originates from. Now, so now that we've gotten the word layoffs and the origin of layoffs straightened out, he also says that he is asking for a salary and benefits freeze across the board back to last year. That in other words, you would not have an increase in salaries, you would not have an increase in benefits based on what everybody had last year. So is that, in terms of the city budget, is that unreasonable? I guess I'll start with you, Barry.
It's totally unreasonable. He says this as if it's in a vacuum. He's going to come out and have these grandiose statements that the union should come to the table. They should be realistic. They should work with him. Well, the matter of fact, Mayor, we did work with you. We worked with you for 6 years. The Yonkers firefighters had no increase in salary. We finally negotiated a contract. We had many concessions in that contract, including lessening our starting salary, paying extraordinarily high health insurance rates, changing our sick incentive. So the Yonkers firefighters are not going to have any additional concessions. We did make numerous concessions to get to where we are, and we're not going backwards. So that's just want that to be clear. No matter how many times we say that, it seems like the mayor wants to change the narrative with the city council and to try to make that a possibility. There is no possibility of the Yonkers firefighters making any contractual concessions whatsoever, no matter how many people are laid off. It's just not going to happen. We came to the table already. We negotiated. The city realized real savings, and they squandered it. Total financial mismanagement by this administration, by his commissioners, by all the executive leadership of the city. Total bankruptcy of any kind of management skills whatsoever.
But to play devil's advocate, the mayor is also arguing that concessions by the unions would benefit citizens overall, and I mean that in terms of by benefiting citizens overall, that if the unions do not give concessions, it would impact quality of life. And I believe he references fireworks on the boardwalk, which is quality of life, and also that somehow he links the public's enjoyment of certain amenities.
What he calls social bankruptcy.
Social bankruptcy, yes.
If I could weigh in on that,
Yeah,
and this is very important, the mayor's trying to paint this picture that the only way out of this, the only way to balance the budget is through further union concessions. And I say further because we've made plenty. But it is absolutely not true. And if you think about the savings that they plan on saving just from us, from the unions, foregoing our contractually, legally binding raise, it's roughly anywhere between $8 and $10 million, depending on who you talk to. If you rule on the high side of that, that is less than 1% of the entire Yonkers City budget. That is 0.8% of the entire city budget. So this notion that the only way out of this is for the unions to make concessions is a lie.
But he's also saying, I'm sorry, Lionel, you haven't spoken yet, so let's hear from you.
Oh yeah, social bankruptcy, because actually I saw that interview, and he said that it'll be the loss. He said before you get to bankruptcy, you have a social bankruptcy. He said you won't have music and sports. Well, I live here. We don't have music today in these schools. We don't have JV sports. So hence, we have this position. So it's already social bankruptcy. We already have potholes in the street. So to say we're going to go there, we already been there. And in 2010, we took zeros. We had a hiring freeze to avert so-called layoffs then. And they took 2 zeros. So how you sign the contract when everybody pointed out that this was the situation? What is people Albany saying about us? What is other people saying about Yonkers when they don't have its financial stuff in order? So and we are taxpayers too. So his narrative can be is the unions versus taxpayers. We are taxpayers. We are citizens. We care about the totality of the city. We don't just care about just our parochial little group. I need fire. 1,500 members, but we need fire. We need police protection. We need garbage pickup. We need teachers. And if anybody thinks that you're going to cut the budget this deep and this far and wide is not going to impact taxpayers, is deluding themselves. It impacts the totality because all of this is interconnected.
But he also makes the argument that municipal workers, I believe everybody, which includes just about everybody, have the highest salaries in New York State.
It's a false narrative he wants to paint. I mean, we've been through this with the fire department. We've been attacked by this mayor since day one, saying we're the highest. Not only did he say we're the highest paid firefighters in New York State, he said we're the highest paid firefighters in North America. It's just an outright, blatant lie. It's more and more of the same. I can show you fire departments in Westchester County that make more money than the Yonkers Fire Department. And as a matter of fact, they don't contribute towards health insurance.
How much is Mount
Our members contribute 50% of the cost of health insurance for a single plan and 35% for a family plan. So when we have to look at the package, It's not just salary alone, it's everything that's included in the package. And Yonkers isn't near the top. We're not saying we're not adequately paid. We negotiated fair contracts. I'm sure Detective Olson could explain to you many police departments in the surrounding very close to us that make substantially more than the Yonkers Police Department do. So, you know, the problem is with this mayor, it's kind of like he spent too many years in the legislature and not as an executive. It was always somebody else's fault. It's either Albany's fault, it's the governor's fault, it's the union's fault, it's everybody's fault but his. The fact of the matter is, the buck stops with the chief executive officer, and the buck should stop with Mike Spano.
But this brings me to the point in terms of what you were saying about the mayor working with the legislator. It is a known fact that Yonkers gets state aid. Now that state aid is Yonkers state aid is lumped in with rural communities upstate, which don't have the demands, don't have the social needs that Yonkers has. So therefore, the money's coming into Yonkers, state aid, is a lot less than the money's coming into, let's say, Long Island, because Long Island is lumped in with New York City. So would you say that part of the onus, part of the reason is on just the basic structure of how New York State funds Yonkers, or is it mismanagement, fiscal mismanagement on the part of Yonkers public officials, Yonkers politicians?
I'd like to weigh in on that. So I do agree. The state has not increased the AIM aid to the City of Yonkers, and I believe in 7 or 8 years, and it should be incumbent upon the state to do that. And I urge our state delegation to go to the governor and fix that. However, it's important to note also that they haven't increased the AIM to anybody. You know, this is not unique to Yonkers. However, you do not see this year in, year out dance of threats of layoffs to their municipal workers every year from every other municipality. That seems to be unique to this city.
Why is it, we've been through this rodeo before, year after year after year, as you say, there's always the contract issues. But why is this year different? Why is this particular year so much more bitter, so much more?
Because the city did not do what it was supposed to do. The mayor did not do what he was supposed to do.
And what was that?
We knew that this was going to be an issue. When we negotiated our contracts with this mayor, we didn't negotiate it with another mayor, another administration 10 years ago. This was with this administration. The union's concessions, one of the many concessions we made was we took very low numbers. Some took zeros, and a lot of us took ones at the front end of the contract in hopes that the city would be able to get its act together in times like this, and that's what they were supposed to do. And if you look at last year, when they knew there was going to be a deficit this year, instead of taxing properly last year and increasing the revenue, they left the tax. They stayed under the tax cap, and that was irresponsible. You know, the city has not balanced its books like they're supposed to. Everybody knew this day was coming. Everybody knew it was coming, except the city did not manage itself properly. You know, throughout the year we continued the same waste and negligence that we do every year, and then come April, everybody scratches their heads and says, "I can't believe we're here again." We knew this was going to happen.
There's a lot of development going on in Yonkers, as everybody knows. We all see it every day, the cranes, the drills, yada, 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 the whole 9 yards. And these developers get tremendous tax breaks. Now, is there a correlation between the tax breaks that the developers are getting weighed against the city services? Case in point, there was a big fire up on Greystone Avenue. I think in the Greystone development, forgive me, Warburton Avenue. And it took a lot of manpower to put that fire out. That fire happened at a potential big apartment building developer. So if you do the math, was the financial requirement to put that fire out, did that balance against the tax breaks that developer was receiving?
Absolutely. It's outrageous the type of tax incentives and tax breaks and tax abatements that developers continue to get in the city of Yonkers, despite proclamations by this mayor that that's not happening anymore. It's totally untrue. They're basically giving away the store. They continue to do it year after year after year. My comment has been for years, if we're not going to get development that's actually going to at least pay for the services it's going to use, then we'd be better off planting grass seed and putting a park bench on a vacant lot, as opposed to giving it away, because every one of these buildings that goes up has a tremendous amount of people. which drives up the need for police services, fire service, educational services, social services, as well as congests our roads and causes it becomes much more difficult to traverse the city of Yonkers with emergency vehicles. It's having a tremendous load. This city of Yonkers, with all the development that's gone on, we should be talking about adding additional firefighters. We should be talking about adding additional police officers, and we should be talking about building new schools and hiring new teachers instead of laying everybody off. This is a debacle. This is total gross mismanagement by this administration for years. This is the culmination of it. The mayor's signature is on every single one of these contracts. And if the mayor doesn't like the contracts as they exist, then perhaps he shouldn't have had his cousin Joey as the lead negotiator, because that in and of itself was a disgrace. In a major city like this, we're the 121st largest city in America, and the mayor's cousin Joey was the lead negotiator. Maybe he should go to cousin Joey and send negotiation school.
I want to get to the point of mismanagement. There was a report that was, I mean, we talked about this before. There was a report that was issued by the New York State Comptroller DiNapoli, and that was regarding financial mismanagement. I didn't read the report. I don't know all the details of the report. Perhaps you guys have. So let's weigh in on that. Lionel, let's hear.
I keep reading the report, and Barry read the report, but I apologize because you have to ask a question too. How did we get here? The complexity of this. If you're a serious leader, a serious journalist, a serious taxpayer, one has to ask the question, how did we get here? It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't come out of a vacuum. It comes out of a context. What is the context that created this dilemma year after year after year? Okay, so the question I'm thinking has to talk about how did we get here? If we have serious people, economics, city officials looking at this budget, how come we're here? You think taxpayers are not equally appalled at what's going on?
Which I want to ask you this: if you represent 1,500 people, and they're talking about laying off, I believe it's 251 of your members.
127, 251 of the total BOE. The average the average salary is $26,000 a year. You're going to balance the budget on the backs of somebody who works that much money? We don't even, some of our members, over a third of our members, don't even make $15 an hour.
And how many of those members will be forced into social services if they got laid off?
You're talking about all of them. They have to be. If you don't make that kind of money, and when you take freezes, all of us who take freezes, if you have a scale and you got freezes, but your goods and services go up, you will never catching up. A sound economy, see, this is the problem. There's a lack of understanding and intellect on how you have a society. Henry Ford said, I'm going to pay my people enough money to buy my car. So if you have goods and services, all that development, 90% non-union. And as Barry said, all that development, no more police, no more firemen, no more schools, and non-union?
But that's not what the mayor says, because according to a statement that the mayor made, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, according to a statement that I heard when we was talking about tax breaks, he did say that the tax breaks for businesses create jobs, and the jobs are, I mean, he made a reference to the jobs employing union workers. He says that our unions, I'm paraphrasing, our unions are employed.
Well, you would think with the addition of all these, thousands of units, they're talking of adding 2,000 units just near the waterfront. You would think that would add jobs in the form of police and fire for sure. But certainly with police, but not only has it not added jobs, we've lost jobs. The police department lost 31 positions only a few years back.
But there was talk of a fifth precinct in that area.
There was talk of a fifth precinct, but it was never going to happen. It was only talk. And it's funny too, because the problems they identified for the reasons of having a fifth precinct still exist, except nothing has been done to address it. They identified a small area in Yonkers where 24% of all calls occur, and we've done nothing to address that, except have some talk about a fifth precinct. It was never going to happen. We're not 1 inch closer to having that fifth precinct, and now we're talking about losing 12% of our entire police department. That's just insanity.
I lost track. The mayor in that interview, he did say that all this economic development did bring jobs, union jobs, construction jobs to the city of Yonkers. Unfortunately, who couldn't join us today is Louis McCanny, the president of Teamsters Local 456, and he's also in the Westchester Building Trades Council. He's looking for the opportunity this week to confront that lie, because nothing could be further from the truth. That's what adds insult to injury. With all of this economic development in the city of Yonkers, with all of the construction going on, almost none of them are union jobs. Most of them are out-of-state, out-of-area contractors that are non-union. And for the mayor to blatantly, basically tout all this development and creation of union jobs is unbelievable. And that was just an outright lie in a 9-minute interview. I counted at least 15 outright lies in that interview. And it's, people are getting tired of it. We're tired of it. We can't believe a word this administration says. We can't believe a word, and I'm speaking for unions, that they speak to us. And for someone that goes to Albany on a regular basis, you know what? Albany does not believe Yonkers either. The governor doesn't believe Yonkers. Look at the controller's report, what he said. Those reports are shared throughout this state. We're a laughingstock of the state of New York. That every year we got to go hand in hand, begging, groveling to have an arts program in a school, to have music or junior varsity sports, to have firefighters, to have police officers. We're supposed to be a first-class city. We're like in the third world here. This is the fact that a police officer who was shot in the face is threatened with layoff in this day and age. We have firefighters who are disfigured from the work that they do, and the incredible work that our teachers do, and our Department of Sanitation work, and that at this time of the year, we have to come and justify our existence and defend ourselves from attack, and then give back what was rightfully negotiated. It's not going to happen. We've had it. It's time for the people to know the truth of what's been going on in the city of Yonkers here. It's an outrage. The taxpayers should be outraged, and honestly, the city council should exert some leadership. It's up for the city council to take charge of the city, because there's no leadership coming from City Hall in the mayor's office.
Okay, I know you guys aren't accountants. I'm assuming you're not accountants. It's going to sound like a dumb, naive question. Where's the money going? I mean, we're talking about, every year we're talking about this vacuous hole that where the money should be evened out appropriately. Where is it going?
I'm not no accountant. I'm not no political economist. Okay, I'm a union president. But why, if it's that question begs to be answered, why don't we have a town hall meeting? Why don't the council and others, if you don't know, why don't they find out year after year and nobody asks us a serious question? How come the taxpayers have to be angry about this too? Because again, this impacts everybody. But now you want me to dissect a budget that I don't think half the people read anyway.
But I think what I'm getting at is a lot of budgeting is basically, it's like forgive the analogy, but it's like three-card Monte, where you got.
I'll play three-card Monte. I understand.
So you understand.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
You got $20 million here, and the next thing you know, that $20 million is somewhere else. You whip up this card, and that money's disappeared.
I thought you were asking a rhetorical question: where'd the money go? But the reality is, we work in the city. All right, we're just like any other organization that's out there, whether it's private sector or public sector. The city of Yonkers provides services to its residents. The services we provide are police, fire, sanitation, education, transportation, social services, and we get our revenue to pay for those services through taxes. So the vast majority of Yonkers money, it's predictable what our budget should be. We know when we have labor contracts what our expenses are going to be. It's unfortunate that management didn't account for that and to make sure there was enough revenue to cover your expenses. And then, instead of recognizing the hard work of our brave firefighters and our brave police officers, the mayor wants to get on an interview and talk about abuse of overtime. And I can tell you, it was 2 years ago, I brought to his attention personally abuse of overtime at the highest levels of the fire department, where we had a commissioner and a medical doctor getting hundreds of hours of overtime to be trained as paramedics. Can you imagine a medical doctor taking a training course to become a paramedic and getting hundreds of hours of overtime? There's a lot of abuse. It's not from the men and women that actually patrol the streets, are on the fire trucks. Most of anything that's abusive is condoned by the executive leadership, including the mayor's office. And I'm sure Detective Olson will point out similar abuses of overtime that he's mentioned to the administration, and nothing happens. They look at you and then, well, it's because of minimum manning or because firefighters are calling in sick. Lie, lie, lie.
And I want to talk about overtime. I think we both Keith and you, Barry, we discussed it on my radio show. But the issue of overtime is constantly being put out there. And my argument is that if you have an expanding demand and then you have fewer uniformed people, then you're going to have to spread that. You have to spread those people to meet that demand. Hence, you get overtime. Also, the issue we talked about, the issue of mutual aid with other towns. So I guess we'll start with you Keith, and we'll talk about the issue or the perception of the abuse of overtime.
Well, first and foremost, if what the mayor said was correct in his interview with Yonkers Voice the other day, he said there's police and fire overtime. Now, if that's correct, if there is abuse in police and fire overtime, what is he doing about it? He doesn't just get to say there's abuse. He's in charge of this. So where's the accountability for those who are supposed to be held accountable? That's a huge question. If there's abuse in the police and fire departments with overtime, and to some degree, I agree with that, then where is the accountability? And the answer is that there is none of that. So when you come to the unions and you ask my members to forego a percentage of their raises, in essence, we'd only be paying for their mismanagement. We'd only be paying for their abuse. And we're not willing to do that. I use the analogy of we're like a child who has a drug-addicted parent, and we keep helping them out and helping them out and helping them out. At some point, you have to stop. And there has to be some tough love, and you have to say, I'm not going to encourage your mismanagement. And that's where we're at right now. We will not.
Let me understand you correctly. Did I hear you say that there is abuse of overtime in the police department?
There's mismanagement of it for sure. And I've been pointing this out to the past administration and to this administration for every week pretty much of my administration. I've been the PBA president since 2010. I was vice president for long before that. This is something I've talked about for years and years and years. And had they listened to my suggestions, we would have saved millions of dollars over the years. Had they listened to other suggestions that I had made and that we had made in the PBA, we would have added millions of dollars in revenue. But they didn't listen. And that's the thing. They want to call us stakeholders now when they want to go into our pockets. But we're not really treated like stakeholders, because if we were, they would listen to our suggestions. We would have saved millions of dollars that would have helped us not be where we are now. And we would have added millions of dollars in revenue that would have also helped.
So does that mean that you partially agree with the mayor on the abuse of overtime?
To some degree I do, yes. I think it's mismanaged. I don't think it goes where it's supposed to. When you can't fund a foot post down where you have $2 billion worth of development, whether it's on straight time or overtime. I'm not advocating for things to be strictly on overtime. The reality is we just don't have enough police officers. They took 31 police officers out of our budget in 2011, 2012, and no supervisors. So, to some degree, I do agree that there is mismanagement.
And on the fire department as well, we lost a safety division. So every time there's a fire, we have to bring in extra people to facilitate having a safety officer. And it's not really abuse. We pointed out some individual instances of abuse that should have been corrected. The vast majority of the police and fire overtime is necessary, justifiable, and appropriate. We're compensating our men and women in our emergency services. It's different than most other departments. We have to provide 24/7. On Christmas, Mother's Day, or the 4th of July, we have to be ready for an emergency. We're responsible for over 200,000 residents of the City of Yonkers. What we do is management you hire an appropriate amount, and then if you run short because we have illnesses, injuries, vacations, or retirements, there's going to be overtime. But it's a management prerogative as to what the overtime is. I can tell you that no firefighter works overtime without a superior signing the overtime slip, justifying it. There's justification documents for every overtime. So when we have overtime in emergency services, it's a management decision. If we hired an additional 200 police officers, there'd probably be no overtime. But who wants to pay for 200 police officers? If we hired an additional 40 firefighters, there'd be probably hardly any overtime. But the reality is we're trying to minimize our fixed cost, keep our variable cost of the overtime at a variable level, and then they turn around and blame the firefighters or police officers when they actually work. When they come to work, there's not one person, even the ones that I pointed out before, they were taking a training course. They came, they received the training. My point was, they should never have been in a training course to do work that they're never going to do, and that you already have certifications even higher and above from. We were bringing these things to light, just like Detective Olson's done on many occasions to this administration, and it falls on deaf ears. So we're not the problem. Unfortunately, we're not going to be part of the solution. We're not making concessions. I want to make that as abundantly clear. The mayor has created, we can start, I know you're looking to wrap up, you can consider this my final statement here, but the mayor has tried to focus in as being a part of the solution. That's not going to happen. We're not making concessions. We made the concessions already. We've come to the table. We negotiated. We gave back. We gave back a lot. And as Detective Olson said, they've squandered it. And if there's going to be closures of fire companies, so be it. It's not on my hands. It's on this administration's hands and the city council's hands. If we have firefighters laid off or firefighters demoted. We love the citizens of Yonkers. We hate to have to take this position, but we've been there so far before, so many times before. We've been abused for years, and we can't trust anybody that we're dealing with. So no, we have a contract. We intend to enforce that contract. We're not making one additional, and I say additional, contractual concession. Thank you.
Getting ready to wrap up. I think, Lionel, let's get a closing statement from you.
Oh yeah, I don't think that we should. I should be responding to everything the mayor said. I'm not a pinball machine. These gentlemen and others, 456 and YFT, have tried to put things on the table that's rational, but the number has always shifted. We 16 million, is 20 million. We can't get a handle on what the actual number is. That's why we asked for the audit the audit group to come in with us. They top heavy, the Board of Education. They got administrators down there who they just hired, and they not on the chopping block. Okay, but I don't want to respond. The mayor said a couple things that was correct, and Keith said yes. The AIM funding hasn't been there. So what was the strategy 7 years ago? What was the thinking on how to get there? What was pulling us together 7 years ago to get to a point that we can both argue for aid? What was that strategy at? I don't see that strategy. Also, the economy is fragile. It's very fragile. Okay? So the so-called renaissance, okay, it's temporal. Okay? But I don't see the minds sincerely thinking about these questions. All they want to do is cast blame and negotiate in the press. We were told you don't negotiate in the press. But when we come to the table and these gentlemen offer suggestions, they're not on the table. When we show the contradictions within the city administration, we don't get no answer towards that.
And with that, I didn't mean to cut you off, but with that, we're going to give Keith the last word.
One of the things the mayor said yesterday or the other day in the interview was that he's trying to paint this picture that this is just, he's only asking for a wage freeze, and he's trying to paint this as some innocuous move, but it's not at all. Our members are not going to take a zero this year. We negotiated this contract with the mayor, and we expect him to uphold it. It's a legally binding contract, and we're going to hold him to it. Later in that interview, he also admitted that that zero has an effect forever on the municipal side. So he admits that he would take advantage of that zero forever, yet fails to acknowledge that that zero would affect our members forever too, and that's one of the reasons why we won't do it. What we were urging our people to do, we're urging our city council right now to just completely reject this budget, send the whole thing back. It was poorly drawn up, with so many cuts to public safety and to education. There is a better way. He needs to really turn over every rock and correct this budget and attack it like anybody would attack a budget in a time of crisis. They haven't done that yet, and we expect them to do so.
And that's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. This discussion is going to continue, and in the words of the great Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. So stay tuned for more developments and hopefully a resolution to the impasse.